Hi everyone and welcome to another Collectomaniac video. Now before we get started, I'd like to give a couple of shout outs to two of my Instagram followers. Effectively what we do before I launch a video on Friday is I post a couple of teaser pictures on my Instagram account and I just see out there who is able to guess what the character is going to be and what the name of the film is. The first shout out is for Sam_G90. He has a very interesting Instagram account. If you like pictures of cats, food, pretty much most things you can think of, then I'd suggest following him. The second shout out, forgive my pronunciation on this, is XEldritchX. Again, he has a very cool Instagram account, lots of horror related things. And if you want to check out these guys' Instagrams, the link is in the description below. Now, if you saw last week's video, you may recall that I promised you something different this week, and if you see what's on the turntable in front of you and the description, you'll see I've delivered. Now what we have here is the Hollywood Collectibles, or HCG Resident Evil liquor diorama. Now from the information I was able to find about this, I believe that this came out around 2010. There were 750 pieces of this, and this is long sold out. Now the original retail price of this was $249.95. The height of the piece is 14 inches, the width is 9 inches, and the depth is 8 inches. Just in case you're wondering, this is 1/6 in scale. And to conclude the background of the piece, this was Hollywood Collectibles Group's first Resident Evil piece. Now while I am here, it would be remiss of me not to make a small confession in that this piece has been slightly repainted or modified by a good friend of mine, Mr. Ian Wilkinson. I will share his details in the link below, but all he really did to this piece was add a slight gloss, glistening effect, just to really bring out some more of the colours on the muscle and the textures as a whole. He also added some slight little different spots of colour on the tongue itself, but the rest is all HCG. Now we'll start at the bottom of the piece as ever, and the first thing you'll notice is the incredible amount of detail that the artist has put into this. Now this is on a black plain circular base, and on this side of the diorama, so it's certainly the inside of the RPD, you can see an array of shotgun shells. There's a plant pot complete with these bits of plants, there's soil, and it's actually smashed where the liquor has obviously came through the window. The piece of glass you can see at the bottom there, they are completely loose, so they come in a separate bag and you can scatter them throughout, which I feel was nice. There are almost, I would describe as bullet holes, as you can see where the concrete or plaster has splintered and shattered. It looks to be almost water damage underneath the sill there, and it's very realistic. You can also make out skirting boards and the underside of the window frame, just adding to the realism of this diorama. As the piece spins round, you can really get a feel for why this is a complete 3D diorama. There's almost a cross section of the wall. You can see a stud at the bottom there. This is a very unusual piece to have such detail and emphasis on a full 360-degree view of this. As we come around to the back of the piece, you can see this is quite clearly the outside of the Raccoon Police Department. There's bricks, there's almost the cement in between them, there's a rocky base. And I also like the way they've included the claw or scratch marks on the windowsill there, and the way the window is almost bowed out from the impact of the liquor smashing through. To me it looks as though there's a wooden sort of board style cladding which is covering the outer of the building, and as we come around to the other side of this, I described as a cross section, you can see what I mean when I described the other side of the stud, almost part of goes through the wall just to add support. One of the weapons at the disposal of the liquor are of course the infamous hands with claws. Now you can see here HCG have opted to go with almost an opalescent kind of enamel claws. You know, unfortunately they're not as sharp as what you would imagine they would be, but It's a valid effort, and you also have to consider the possibility of breakages, which when you're making resin that thin and then producing, you know, an ultra sharp edge, it was always going to be a danger. So I can understand why they've gone the option. You can see the amount of detail, certainly in the upper part of the arm. I think they've dropped the ball a little bit in terms of the paint job on the top of the palm. It seems a little bit washed out. They've done an awfully good job of representing the different muscle groups and hands, and also that goes to the arms as well. There's a multitude of different colours. There's reds, there's pinks, there's oranges, there's browns, and the artist has done a very, very good job sculpting this to make it look as realistic as possible. As we come to the main body of the piece, you'll see that one of the many things that the artist's gotten right with this piece is the incredible dynamism they were able to achieve at the piece overall, the way it's been able to pinpoint that exact moment that the licker would have burst through the window. And anyone who's played the game will of course remember the way the licker crawled on the ceiling upon your first encounter with him. So it's, as I've said before, no stretch to believe that he would have smashed through the window, as when you walk into that corridor you can clearly see the shattered glass, and if you've been eagle-eyed in the previous room you'd have noticed this creature, at the time no one knew the name of it, was going past that window. Now you'll have to forgive the lighting on this. I do realise it may be a little bit bright, it may be difficult to really appreciate all of the different tones that HCG have put into this, but they are there. I mean, you can see yourself the incredible detail they've put onto the sculpt, the muscle groups, even the shading. You can see kneecaps, you can see the ridges that protrude from the spine. I believe HCG, indeed the artist, should be commended on this. They've also managed to capture extremely well in what is the most iconic part of the licker, the tongue. The proportions are correct, there's that gloss and glistening effect, and also the way it curls back round. It again looks like it's straight out of the game, which is undoubtedly what they were going for here. As we see multiple angles of the piece, you'll see it has been extremely well positioned, and there is in fact a peg under the licker's right hand, which is the only means of support. It's been designed so incredibly well that there's no real way of it toppling over, because it's not an extremely heavy piece, but the weight is extremely well balanced. The other fantastic thing about this piece is that no matter what angle you display it at, it still looks incredible. You don't even have to have it face on, or even the RPD side. Even if you had this displaying from the back, it would still look great in my opinion. As you've seen while this spins round, I've also been able to really appreciate even more detail of the wall and the cross section of the piece. One of the most interesting things I was surprised to learn about lickers years after playing the game for the first time was in fact they are blind. Now it may be obvious to me sitting here now, but at the time as a young child when playing this, I was terrified trying to navigate myself around the licker. More importantly, I'd ran out of ammo, which often was the case. Now, as we can see here, the brain on the licker is exposed. There's obviously no membrane, skin, or even a skull to protect the brain, so it certainly is the weakest part of the creature, and it purely relies on sound. So the cheat or intended way to beat lickers is simply a lot of the time just to walk by them, because often if you're not running, you're therefore not making sound, therefore you don't need to waste ammo on them. HCG have been able to capture some nice details in the actual head sculpt of the licker. There's skin folds above the teeth where the mouth is quite clearly open. The detail of the brain is there. There's also what I would describe as a slight vein on either side. Now I'm not sure if that's accurate to the in-game character or not, but it just adds a little bit extra detail. The paint has also been nicely done. There's shading, there's depth to the skin. So the teeth have been sculpted in a realistic way. You can see they're all individual. They're not just simply a nice row of teeth. Some are imperfect. There's also staining what looks to be on them. And I'm not sure if you're able to quite make out, but on the tongue there's also different levels of pink and also what seems to be texture on it as well, so it just doesn't look like one flat piece of resin. To summarise my thoughts on this piece, I'd go as far as to say this is one of the best Resident Evil statues ever made. Now this may sound like a bold statement, but bear with me here. So first off, you have to consider what Resident Evil statue is really up before this, and to my knowledge I can't really recall any. Now if you're talking about what has come since, I believe that only it's really Hollywood Collectibles group who have had the license for this. And when I compare this to the more recent 1/4 scale Licker statue that they produced, the differences are night and day. I mean, this is a whole 3D diorama. There's dynamism to the piece. It actually looks like it's came directly out of the game. Whereas the newer statue, okay, it's slightly bigger. The Licker is sat up like it would in certain scenes of the game, but the base, it's just a flat black base. There's nothing else really beyond that. You would really have to display it at one set angle. And when I compare the detail of the sculpt and also the paintwork in this piece from, I'd add again, 2010 compared to the current one, it's extremely disappointing, the, to be honest, quality level that the Resident Evil pieces have slipped to, in my opinion. Don't get me wrong, if I was happier with the standard of Resident Evil statues, I'd have an awful lot more. However, in all honesty, this is the only Resident Evil statue anyway I'd want in my collection, which is extremely disappointing because I am a huge Resident Evil fan. I have been since the original came out in '97. I'm not just going to have a piece of my collection just for the sake of my love for the source material. It has to be of a certain quality. Now, that's not to say there's anything wrong or anything against anyone who has these other pieces, as this is all personal preference after all. Now, I hope you enjoyed this video, even though it was something a little bit different than the norm. However, next week we will be back with another 1/6 scale figure from my horror collection. It may be one's customs, it may be another artist, we'll have to see. If you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up. If you didn't for whatever reason, thumbs down. If you have any comments or you'd like to discuss the piece a bit more, please write those below. And if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. Thank you very much for watching this Collectomaniac video.